Hey, it's Em, here to talk about a couple of things that I've watched recently. True Detective Night Country. I was a little late getting to the end of that and tried to avoid spoilers, but finally did finish watching it. And Dune Part 2. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Stay tuned. Starting with True Detective Night Country, which is the fourth season of the anthology series. I liked it not as much as the first season, and it really was going to be one of those things where the bottom line question was, is it as good as the first season? For me, it wasn't. It was still better than seasons 2 and 3, but that's not a super high bar to clear. So yeah, this one is set in an Alaska town called Ennis. Jodie Foster plays Liz Danvers. Is that right? I don't even know. She's like a sheriff of this small town. She is also raising a Native American daughter. It's all complicated, too complicated for me to express here. The central mystery is that there is a science research station. It becomes very kind of Michael Crichton-esque, where this science research station, the scientists all run out on like the first long night of the year. If you've ever been to Alaska or you know anything about it, my grandparents lived there, so I used to visit in the summer when you had almost 24 hours of daylight, and then sometimes also at Christmas where it was like 24 hours of darkness. So there's like a point in time right around my birthday. In fact, this season started on my birthday, I want to say. The timeline of it's like December 17th, first long night. That would be, But anyway, on that first long night, the scientists at the research station run out into the cold, and they're found naked and frozen, and people are wondering what's going on there. But there's also some unrest because there's a mining operation in this town, and it is functionally the bread and butter of the town, but it's also poisoning all of the water and causing like stillbirths and things. So, it's a complicated community story with a supernatural-esque element that I think if you know True Detective, you know that the answer is not ever going to be fully supernatural. Like, it's going to be at best ambiguous, and there will always be the possibility to look at it from an angle that is like completely logical. This is what happened, these are the people who did it, but there's always also that lingering question of, but is there more to it than that? And that's kind of what True Detective, at least season 1, specialized in, and this season tried to strike that very same balance. It had a lot of nods to the first season that I almost wish they hadn't tried to do. They mentioned the time as a flat circle line, and it's like, I feel like it would have done better to just kind of be its own thing instead of trying to mimic or mirror season 1, even though there's a reason why season 1 is so popular and so good. The chemistry between Jodie Foster and, I'm going to say her name wrong, I apologize, Callie Reyes? I don't know how you say her name, but she plays Navarro. She plays another, she plays a patrol officer versus like sheriff's department. It's in any case, they're both authority figures. They're working together because there's also this really old murder mystery of a Native woman who was murdered. She used to protest the mines. There's an understanding that that probably her death is tied to that and or the research station. And there's weird mystic symbolism that really doesn't... There's a lot of red herrings and that kind of thing. I want to say, like, when it started out this season, it was super intense and I was very into it. But like I said, as it kind of went on, it kind of petered out for me in a way that, I don't know. I mean, it was fine. Was I fully I mean, I was satisfied in the way that after you eat a decent meal, you're like satisfied, but you don't walk away going, wow, that was an amazing meal. It was like, well, that was good. That filled me up. It tasted fine. That's how I felt about it. So, which is like damned by faint praise, I guess. But again, I'm not saying it was bad. I'm not saying I wouldn't recommend it. I'm just saying it was maybe not quite at the level I was hoping. And definitely, I feel like it started out better than it eventually ended. I thought Pete was a really great character. So he is the son. He's a kind of a rookie cop. He's the son of a guy who wanted Jodie Foster's job. And so there's, she's taken the son under her wing, but obviously that causes tension. And also Pete is struggling because his wife and young son, like, they're tired of him being called out at all hours of the day because Liz doesn't have boundaries. And so she's taught Pete not to have boundaries, and I felt bad for him. I felt bad for, like, kind of him being caught amongst all these other things, just being pulled in a dozen different directions. I thought that was probably the most interesting, like, interpersonal part of the story that was being told there. Yeah, I don't think ultimately that the mystery for me was super interesting. Either of them, the scientists, that was kind of an interesting story. But the other murders, I don't know. Overall, I guess I didn't invest quite as much as I wanted to in these characters. Jodie Foster's character Liz is very standoffish and bristly, and it's fine for the character, but you don't get really close to that. And Navarro, she's also pretty standoffish and bristly. And, when you pair this with something like Fargo, where it's kind of like, yay, girl power, or, I don't know, there's definitely a sense of women coming together to do a thing, right? I felt like the relationships in Fargo were easier to invest in, more interesting. I felt like that tension in that story held the line the whole way through, so I did prefer something like Fargo season 5 to this. But yeah, I know I'm rambling. It's hard to articulate how I feel about it, but overall it was fine. I think there's probably some Emmy, respectable type Emmy nomination viable stuff going on here. I guess we will wait and see how it goes. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like this year, between my reading and my viewing, like, my expectations are too high. Everything's kind of falling for me. I don't know. I'm struggling. Guys. I'm struggling to find books that I like more than like 2 to 3 stars worth, and I guess I'm struggling to find media that I love either. So, which brings us to Dune Part 2. So, I'm going to give you my background. I think I made a video when Part 1 came out, but just in case I didn't, or you've forgotten where I stand, keep in mind that I loved the 1984 version, film version by David Lynch as a kid. I didn't see it when it came out because I would have been too young. I would have been like 8. But I saw it when I was like 11 or 12, and I loved it. Now, the first time I saw it on like cable television, and they were broadcasting basically the David Lynch cut, like the long version. So I understand, after having later seen the theatrical cut, I was like, yeah, I can see why people are like, this doesn't make any sense. But seeing that movie is what prompted me to read the book. And I read the first 3 books. I read Dune, Dune Messiah, and Children of Dune. Children of Dune is where it got kind of weird, and I think at that point I stopped. But like, yeah, I read these books when I was 13, maybe. Oh, sorry. Anyway, and it's been a really long time since I've read the books, but I loved the ones that I read. And I even wanted to name my dog Atreides. My parents wouldn't let me. But but yeah, I mean, the 84 movie and these books had a big impact on my youth, and at the same time, like, I don't remember everything exactly, like, from the books, so I have a hard time maybe saying, well, but in the books this and that. I do think Dune Part 2 stays true to the spirit of the story as much as I remember it. Obviously, the cinematography is beautiful, and any changes they made to the story, I can understand why they did it that way. At the same time, again, like, I think I'm just hard to please. Okay, my whole family loved the movie, and I liked it, but it felt very long, like, to an unnecessary degree to me, even though, like, when I look at it, I say, okay, well, every plot point builds towards what I understand why everything that's in the film is there, and yet it still felt very long to me. Like, I just felt like it didn't maybe all need to be there, even though I understand why it is there. And then there's the very on the nose, like, messaging here about fanaticism, cultist, like, beliefs, like, of religion. And, I don't know. I think I would have preferred a little more subtlety in that, even though, it is the story as the book goes. Paul is bred to, more or less be, hopefully, this Kwisatz Haderach, which is what the Bene Gesserit kind of wanted to play. It's such a rich story and world building from Frank Herbert that I do believe the book does justice to all of that. I mean, the movie does justice to all that, but, like, there was just something about it. It's too long and a little too on the nose for me. I thought it was well acted. It's gorgeous. I don't know. There's just something about it. And I mean, I will say, the more I think about it, the more I like it. Like, I walked away kind of going, and now, like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, well, it's not that, well, it wasn't bad at all. But, like, I feel like what I want to do is sit down and watch parts 1 and 2 together when, part 2 is available on streaming finally. I want to see, because I almost feel like I will like it all more when it's put together. I feel like the first movie is a lot of setup, but that, again, is true to the book. There's a lot of setup. Paul being 15, moving to Arrakis, starting to understand the politics involved, being in danger, things like that. And then I feel like, obviously the whole second part of the book is Paul embedded with the Fremen, learning their ways, the guerrilla warfare against the Harkonnens. I'm always going to say Harkonnen, guys. I'm not going to say Harkonnen, because that's just, that's gross. That's a gross pronunciation. I hate it. But anyway, I don't even care. I don't even care what's right. No. If you're going to hear it from me, you're going to hear Harkonnen. So, yeah, like, the guerrilla warfare, I thought Austin Butler, like, he was so, like, I didn't know it was Austin Butler. Like, I didn't read anything because I didn't want any spoilers, so I did not expect Christopher Walken, so he, like, shows up in the first few minutes of the movie, and I'm like, what's Christopher Walken doing here? But then, like, I'm, like, staring at Fade, Rotha. And I'm just like, he looks so familiar, and I know this is somebody that I normally see with hair, obviously, so like, what am I missing? And it took me a while to figure out who it was, but I mean, he was great. That spot on. And a Skarsgård when you see one. I mean, obviously he was in the first movie too, but like, there's just something about the Skarsgårds. They all kind of look kind of enough alike that it's a Skarsgård. You may not know which one. I will say, Florence Pugh, is that how you say her name? As Princess Ireland, or Ireland. I don't even think they used her name in the movie. But every time I see her, I know, I don't know, there's something about her that just pulled me out of the film, because it was just like, well, that's Florence Pugh. I don't know. And maybe it's just that the princess's character, even in the books, well, you feel a little bad for her because she does end up married to Paul, but it's a loveless marriage because obviously he actually loves Chani, and like, she ends up writing all these books about Paul, Muad'Dib and his history and, the belief systems around him and stuff. She and her diaries and everything are kind of key to his whole mythos, right? Like, it's just, so, but in this, I don't know. I didn't really care for the way she was presented, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. That fell a little flat for me, but everything else was good. The Bene Gesserit stuff, always nice to see Charlotte rambling, even from behind a veil. Paul's mother becoming a kind of a rival Reverend Mother for the native population, the Fremens and the Vatican, but like, and Javier Bardem obviously is Stilgar. I felt like the return of Gurney there should have been a little more joy and surprise involved in Gurney, like just turning up again. If Paul had like foreseen it, it might not have been as like, but he should have, I don't know, maybe been happier to see him. It's tough. Paul's character arc from resistant to being like a messiah figure to embracing it felt like he turned pretty quickly. They didn't really explore a lot of that. Alia of the Knife, which is Paul's unborn sister at this point, he sees her briefly in a dream vision type thing. I don't know, like I feel like weirdly I go back to the 1984 movie, and I feel like that Alia was creepier and cooler in a way. But yeah, they didn't really fully explore the way the water of life changes Paul. He just kind of wakes up and behaves differently or something. I don't know. I felt like there was like maybe a disconnect there a little bit, but like his change of mind and heart and direction felt abrupt rather than built to, even though like I can see places where it's like he's pressed into it and he's like, no, I can't go, I don't want to go, and then he goes and suddenly he's like, fine, I'm in charge, I'm taking over, I'm gonna do this thing. And I don't know, it was good. I mean, it's definitely like, it's early in the year. People are like, oh, the 2024 movie, like the box office is terrible. I'm like, yeah, January and February always suck. That's where they dump all the cruddy movies. And, we get to spring, and that's when you start building towards your summer blockbusters. That's nothing new. So it's not surprising that, I mean, I know Dune Part 2 was supposed to come out last year. It was supposed to be, part of that big end of the year push that we get towards the holidays at the back end. But I think it was really good. It was smart of them to put it here, kind of at the beginning of March, the beginning of that usually wave towards bigger movies. We saw some really good previews. Obviously, we're looking forward to the new Ghostbusters movie. I don't know about, is it Godzilla X Kong, by Kong, times Kong? How do you say that? Like, it means something different in fan fiction, you're like, But, or they have Godzilla's name first. It's Godzilla by Kong. It's not Kong by Godzilla, right? Like, that's not it. I think. I don't know. That looked kind of dumb. But, but we saw that one. We saw the Society for Magical Negroes. That actually looks really cute. I can't remember what else we saw. There were like a lot of previews, which, you front load them on what you think is going to be a big movie because you want your stuff in front of that. But I remember thinking, well, 2024 doesn't look like it's going to be as terrible as all that. I'm looking forward to, Deadpool and Wolverine or whatever too. I'm still very selective about what I go to see at the cinemas. But Dune Part 2 felt like it deserved a big screen treatment. And I think I'll probably go see Ghostbusters on the big screen and the Deadpool Wolverine movie. And I don't know what else I might think needs to be seen big, But anyway, again, I feel like I'm damning Dune Part 2 with faint praise. It was good. I think my expectations were just so high after all the hype and everybody coming out, all the critics coming out going, this is amazing. But I also think we've had like weeks of kinds of movies. Almost anything would have felt huge. I do wonder if we're kind of moving back towards big sci-fi fantasy, like stuff from the 80s, now that we have maybe better technology to produce things like that. If you're willing to take the time and money to do it well, which Dune definitely does, I feel like maybe fewer superhero, more like, when I look at what books are popular now, sci-fi, romantasy, I don't know that romantasy would translate well to the big screen. It's more like a Hallmarky kind of thing. Get on that, like, Hallmark. Why don't you get some romantasy in there? But yeah, I feel like sci-fi, big budget fantasy if done well, but it's easy to do fantasy poorly, so you got to be careful. And then going back to maybe these smaller dramas, because I think we've shown that there's a taste for those as well. Like to counterbalance all the big stuff, like something a little smaller. Anatomy of a Fall was a big one. Past Lives. Like, people like this stuff. We need to keep making this stuff so that not everything and I get it, because if people are like me and they're like, but that I can watch on the small screen, maybe these smaller movies, it's harder to get them, distribution, because cinemas are like, well, people only come here for the big stuff, and it's a tough, there's no easy answer to that. Art house cinemas exist for a reason, I guess. We have a really nice one in our town, and it's where we saw Napoleon. It's where we saw The Holdovers. So I think we need to keep making movies like that and finding good ways to distribute them. I just think the big theater chains that are trying to stay afloat, I can see why they're like, well, we want the big movies that are going to draw the big crowds. But maybe you can draw crowds with small movies too. I don't know. Maybe I should put my money where my mouth is, and if I want more small movies, I should go see them at the cinema, right? Which, like I said, I have done. Napoleon and The Holdovers. Something else I saw there too. I can't remember what now. But, anyway, that's me rambling about these movies. If you've watched True Detective or Dune, or you have thoughts about either of those, or the books, or Dune 1984. I never saw there was like a sci-fi miniseries version of Dune, right? In like the 90s or early 2000s, somewhere in there. I never saw that one. I've seen clips from it. It doesn't look good. Doesn't look like anything I want to see, so I'm just going to leave that alone. Leave that where it is. But it did make me decide to reread Dune, so I did pick it up last night and start rereading it. And I do think the thing about Dune the book, I will say, is that it's almost easier to read if you've seen some movie version of it. Because I can't imagine, sorry, my leg's falling asleep. I can't imagine trying to read Dune without already kind of knowing what was going on. Because I was reading, I only got like 20 or 30 pages in last night because it was late and I was tired. But like, if I didn't already kind of have a sense of everything, I'd probably be very confused by the book. It's almost easier, in my opinion, to watch some version of the movie and then read the book so that you can kind of apply what you know to what you're reading. But anyway, that's just me, my opinion. A lot of people are like, oh, read the book first. In a lot of cases, I would agree, but in this case, I would say, at least for me, and it might be just because I don't read a lot of sci-fi, it was easier as a kid to see the movie and then read the book and be like, yes, okay, I understand this, because I saw the movie, so I know what's going on and who's who. Like, I have something to map it to, whereas I remember trying to read Dune to my 11 or 12-year-old son. He had not seen any of the movies because he's 18 now, so these movies were not out, and they've never seen the 1984 version. But and he was like, I don't understand what's going on, and I kept having to stop and explain it. And I think if he had seen the movie and then read the book, he'd probably have been better off too. So there you go. In any case, I've gone on for a while, so I'm gonna stop there. And let me know your thoughts. I realize I'm kind of in the minority, and it's not even that I'm like, oh, Dune Part 2 was terrible. I was expecting more, I could think, or something. But if you were to say, well, what were you expecting? I wouldn't be able to tell you. I expected to like it more than I did, maybe? I don't know. I'll let it marinate a little bit, and if I have any other thoughts about it, I will get back to you at a later date. In any case, yeah, so now I'm rereading Dune, and I've got a couple other books that I started but haven't gotten very far with. So I'm going to be behind on my reading challenge for Goodreads, I think, because I'm having a really hard time just finding books and sticking with them. Although I think I probably will stick with the Dune reread. So that'll be good. It just might take me a while because it's a dense read, so it's a slower read, so it's not something I can just rip through real quick. And should I read the last 3 books? So if you get to Children of Dune, and this is all I remember, and I was, again, like 13-ish when I was reading it, so I remember at some point the kids, I want to say they're boy-girl twins, they turn into sandworms or something, and I think that's when I tapped out. I was like, yeah, this has finally gotten too weird even for me. I think I'm done. Dune and Dune Messiah, I was all in. I got into Children of Dune, and I was like, okay, this is getting really strange. So that was the point at which I stopped. But maybe I should go ahead and read at least all of the Frank Herberts. I don't know if I could get into all the Brian ones. Although I met Kevin G. Anderson at a writing conference, and he's fantastic. He's a great guy, and I might give it a go just for him. I remember when he wrote the X-Files novelizations, or maybe they weren't but X-Files novels, and and he did a bunch of Star Wars stuff. Like, he's cool. He's very cool. So I guess if anybody's gonna do Dune well, it's probably gonna be him. But Anyway, that's all I have for today. Until next time, take care.